Yes, Belle Svetlana, née Annabelle Maestro, ran the most exclusive, expensive call girl business in town. The town being New York, as opposed to Los Angeles, the city she'd grown up in, surrounded by luxury and all the opulence two movie star parents could buy. Thank God she'd escaped those two egomaniacs. Mom, the ethereal queen of quality independence, and Dad, the macho king of big-budget schlock. What a horror show, having them as parents. When she dropped out of college in Boston and settled in New York, neither of her loving parents had given a rat's ass. Admitting to a grown daughter did nothing to enhance their public images. So, they'd arranged to send her a monthly allowance, blithely told her to follow her dreams, and left her to her own devices. Annabelle was no slouch when it came to following her dreams. She'd soon found herself caught up in the club and party scene, a lifestyle that had satisfied her for a while, until one night she'd been introduced to Frankie Romano, a popular DJ who worked private parties in the occasional hot club. One look at Frankie and it was lust at first sight. Originally from Chicago, Frankie was quirky and attractive in a Michael Imperioli kind of way. Fast-talking and edgy. He had longish dark hair, ice-chip blue eyes, and sharp features. The trouble with Frankie was that he was usually broke. This on account of the fact that he was a dedicated cokehead, and whatever money came his way went straight up his nose. Annabelle fell hard, for in spite of Frankie's drug use, it turned out that he was a star in bed, whenever he wasn't too coked out to perform. She didn't know anything about his background, and she didn't care. As far as she was concerned, they were soulmates. After a few weeks of crazy togetherness, Frankie had moved into her Soho loft, a move she hadn't objected to. The only downer was that eventually she found herself spending her entire allowance keeping him in drugs. So it wasn't long before, at Frankie's urging, she called her dad in L.A. and requested that her allowance be increased. Ralph Maestro, the self-made son of a Brooklyn butcher, a man who'd gotten shot by a robber when Ralph was 12, told her, "No way." "I made it on my own without 2 cents to rub together," Ralph had sternly informed her. "We've already given you a head start. If you want more money, I suggest you go out and find yourself a job." Annabelle was furious. Her parents raked in millions, and Daddy Movie Star was telling her to get a job. Screw them. It was increasingly obvious that they didn't give a damn about her. A couple of weeks later, she and Frankie had come up with a master plan. They'd been lying in bed reading the lurid headlines about a married politician who'd recently gotten caught having sex with a series of high-priced call girls. "How stupid is he?" Frankie had ruminated, scratching his skinny butt. "The dumb asshole should have paid cash. That way nobody gets busted and everyone goes home happy." "Cash is good," Annabelle had agreed. "For special girls only." "Yeah," Frankie had said half-jokingly. "Not some mouthy skank who's going to sell his story, but very special girls. You know the kind of babes I mean. Models, actresses. They're always on the lookout for an extra score. And here's the sweet part of the deal. We know 'em all." "We sure do." "So," Frankie had said after a thoughtful few minutes. "You thinking what I'm thinking?" She was indeed. And so their adventure had begun. At first they'd both considered it a lark, but after a few months it had turned into one of the most successful call girl businesses in town. Flushed with success, Annabelle had soon created 2 identities for herself. One, she was Annabelle Maestro, a girl struggling to make it in the fashion industry as a sometime designer. And 2, Belle Svetlana. She got off on the exotic sound of the Russian surname. A woman of mystery who was able to supply the right girl to satisfy any man's fantasy. For a price. A hefty price, depending on what was required. Annabelle's girls were not hookers. They were stylish, good-looking career women who enjoyed the extra income. Models, actresses, singers, designers, all classy, smart, and discreet, some of them quite well known. It was Annabelle's idea that the girls they recruited should wear masks when they went on their jobs, to hide their identities. She was sure that the men would get off on the mystery. And the girls were happy too, imagining that wearing masks would conceal their true identities. Finding the right girls was no problem. Frankie, a major coxman before hooking up with Annabelle, knew them all, and he used his considerable way with words to talk them into anything. A shitload of untaxable cash income was the big temptation. And as Frankie pointed out, since most of the girls were fucking for nothing, what was the big deal if they did it and got handsomely paid, especially if they were able to remain anonymous? Frankie vetted all their would-be clients, while Annabelle liaised with the girls and arranged the appointments. Between them, they pocketed 60% of every assignation, and it didn't take long before they were rolling in cash. It was always cash. No paper trails involved. Now they'd been doing it for almost a year, and what a sweet, money-making business it had turned out to be. Neither Annabelle nor Frankie had any complaints. That is, until they both realized they needed help. After thinking about it for a while, Frankie had recruited Janie Bonifacio, one of his many cousins who lived in Brooklyn and worked as a bookkeeper. He'd asked her if she'd be interested in working for him, and since she'd always harbored a huge crush on Cousin Frankie, she immediately quit her job, and he'd hired her to take care of the phones and schedule the girls' appointments. Janie, a 275-pound unmarried mother with a 19-year-old son, Chip, was delighted to get the job. Worshipping her cousin from afar was one thing, but actually working for him was a dream come true, even if the business he ran with his snooty girlfriend was fairly dubious. Annabelle trusted Janie, but she wasn't so trusting when it came to Chip, a surly slacker with way too much attitude and a complaining disposition. Annabelle regarded him as a not-so-charming Frankie in training. They used him to run errands and drive the car. At least they're family, Frankie had assured her. They'll never screw us. Don't be so naive, she retorted. When it comes to money, everyone has an agenda. Hey, Frankie had said, we're paying Janie plenty to make sure they stay discreet. And remember this, Janie's got a thing for me. She'd never do anything to hurt me. Annabelle was not so sure.